One of the hardest things as being a business owner is letting someone go or firing somebody. If you want to know exactly how to do it in an elegant way that leaves you both in a much better place, stick around and watch today's video. Hey, I'm Jason Everett from the High Performance Salon Academy, and being a business owner is not always happy camp. In fact, most of the time, it's not. You have a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, and you're responsible for people's livelihoods on your team. At the High Performance Salon Academy, we believe in teaching you ways that are non-traditional. Because look, could you just walk into somebody and just say, hey, can you come in my office because you're fired? And do it that way? Well, of course you can, but there's a much more elegant way to handle it. And there's some ways that people do it that really create some challenges and issues for them later, if I could say it that way, that I'd like to prevent you from doing. So I'm gonna give you a couple pointers on today's video to help you, and I hope that it creates an easier environment for you to move forward, and not only just move forward with that person, but feel good about yourself at the end of it, because again, it's not always easy. So question number one that usually comes up is, can I fire a booth renter? So if you're in a salon and you have renters, I just wanna clarify, renters are not the same as employees. You can let employees go, but you cannot let booth renters go. You cannot renew their contracts, or decide you're gonna modify their contract, but you can't fire them. So if that was your question, I just wanna make sure that was answered for you. But I am talking specifically about an employee-based business where you have employees and that you pay them not as 1099 contractors, but as employees of your company. They're W-2 employees. What do you do if you need to let someone go? Well, first and foremost, I just wanna say, do you have a set of performance standards that they need to adhere to, that if they're not adhering to, you are going to need to work with them on? And by the way, this is more of a fire if they are not performing at the level that you want, not that they show up, heaven forbid, drunk or some other problem to work that day. That might be grounds for an immediate termination. You say, hey, that can't happen here, you're fired. That's totally different. But let's say someone's not performing, or you feel like they're not a good culture fit, or maybe they're creating a lot of drama and problems, and despite the amount of times that you've talked to them, you still need to sit down and have a conversation. There's a couple guidelines I want to give you. First and foremost, sit down and have a conversation and give them time to improve. This is one of the most important things you can do, and actually document that conversation. Say, hey, here's what I need to have happen. I'm looking at your performance. Here's what's working, here's what's not working, and here's what needs to improve in order for us to remain working together. It's a great way to say it. So in order for us to remain working together, because you're alluding to the idea that this could get them to a place where you will no longer work together, AKA fired, but you don't have to use that terminology. Then what you do is you set a review time to sit down and go through it again and say, hey, in the next 2 weeks, I need you to work on these specific areas. Then I'm gonna check on you in 2 weeks and see if they've been resolved. Now, if you sit down in 2 weeks and it's still not been resolved, you may choose to give them another 2 weeks. Maybe they've shown some improvement, or maybe they've shown no improvement at all and it's time for you to part ways. And that's how I say it, is I would literally sit down with somebody and say, hey, can we have a quick meeting? I think based on what's happened over the last couple weeks, I think it's time for us to part ways. I never would say, you're fired, you're out of here, it's not time for us to work together anymore. I would just say, I think it's time for us to part ways. And there's a couple things. First and foremost, go into that meeting prepared. Make sure that you have whatever checks you need to have written, you have any documentation thing to sign, you have a list of all of the items that they need to have with them and return to you when you're done, and you've potentially already either been prepared to do it immediately, or you've blocked them out of any systems that you have inside your office, any access to social media, computers, or software programs that you have. It's super, super duper important that all that's done. Pro tip on this one too, because this will save you from getting in a lot of trouble, is have a witness with you. You never want to be in a situation where you have to let somebody go and you end up in court. I hope that never happens to you, but if you do, it's always good to have somebody else from your office who was there at the time where you let them go. Because if they ever said, well, they told me this or they told me that, you have somebody else from your company that said, hey, that's actually not how it went down. And again, two people from the company are much better represented than just your word against theirs, because the courts will usually side with the employee, and they say the employer is the big bad person in this situation. So make sure that you have a witness with you. Make sure that you're prepared, and talk about it. It's time for us to part ways. And I want to give you another kind of pro level tip on this that I think is a really important one. And it might sound strange, but it's actually important for you to be a little more vague when you let somebody go than specific. If you say, I'm firing you because X, Y, and Z, it gives them the opportunity to argue with you. Well, no, I didn't. That's not right. You can't let me go for. But if you just sit down, most of the time, in fact, 99% of the time, they know why they're being let go. And if you just say, I've decided it's time for us to part ways, and I think it's time for you to be successful somewhere else. You can say that. I don't always say it that way, but I've heard it said. And if it feels comfortable for you to say it, that'd be one way to handle it. But just say, I think it's time for us to part ways, and I don't think we should work together anymore. And so here's what I need you to do. I need you to sign this. We're gonna let it go. I appreciate the time that we spent together, but I think you just have, your talents could be used somewhere else besides here. Thank you so much for the time we spent together. And then just very elegantly, in the best possible way, just have them gather their things, and if you need to work with them or walk with them to go do it, is a great way to make sure it's there. Now, this might seem like a silly tip, and if you've had to let a lot of people go, you probably already know this, but I just feel like because there's one person out there that probably doesn't know this, don't ever fire somebody at the beginning of a shift. I know that sounds crazy, and you might think that I'm insane for even saying it, but I've seen it happen. Even in my company, I saw somebody fire somebody, and I walked into work and they were crying. This other person was crying. I'm like, what happened? They're like, well, I fired them, and they have to just finish up their day. If you fire somebody at the end of the day, preferably, or let them go in the morning, and actually let them go and let them leave. You never want them to have to work out their obligation. And again, remember, you're gonna wanna check with your local state laws and regulations to make sure you follow any other local policies. And if you need to, you might want to check with your attorney to make sure that you follow all the procedures possible. And if you have an HR consulting company, you can call and get even more information, even better. But I hope as you watch this video, and I know it's a little longer than what we normally do, but I hope as you watch this video, you've got a couple of ideas of, man, I could have let that person go a little bit better, or I could have been a little easier. And the thing that I will tell you about letting anyone go is they can tell what your intention is. And if your intention is to move forward and let them have a better life and for you to have a better life because you are not in each other's life, that's fantastic. But if your intention is to really like stick it to them and make them feel horrible, they will get that out of that conversation. So walk into it with a clean intention, because if your emotion is really high, your intelligence is low. And trust me, when you fire anyone, their emotion is going to be very high. And you don't want to have two people with high emotions talking to each other, because it's going to create all kinds of problems, all kinds of situations. And again, the calmer you can be when you do it and just speak matter-of-factly to the situation, most likely you will reach the best outcome. I can't guarantee that they're still going to be friends with you or going to want to hang out at Christmas parties, but they will be in a situation where they at least have some level of respect for you, even if you're not specific on how you let them go. So if you want more tips like this and you thought this was helpful for you, do me a favor, click the like button, share this with somebody else so they can see it, because I know there are people who have the same exact problem where they struggle to let people go and they don't know what to say, and they might want to watch this video before they let someone go next time. All right, have a great day, and check out our free private Facebook group called Profitable Salon Owners for more great tips just like this.